everybody, it's Safi and Marco, dish out on the movies. Well, Marco is still under the weather in terms of his voice. So I'll tell you what we did. We watched another prom night movie, the number 4, so the 4th one. And let me see. And I don't even know why I bother. I'm going to tell you what the name of it was. It's stupid because this movie, truthfully, had nothing to do with prom. In fact, I think the person who made it, he wanted to do a movie about psychotic priests who were possessed by the devil, and the prom night people wanted to do a movie about prom, and so they hooked in the two storylines together, and well, it didn't work. But it was done in 1992, and it's called Deliver Us, which, really? Deliver us from evil. So that's, a line in a holy scripture, and I'm not going to repeat it because nobody wants to hear that religious stuff in a movie review. But anyway, I'll read you what Marco says, and then I'll make some comments. Okay, this is what Marco says, and basically he kind of, the movie got like 2.5 stars or whatever it is from IMDb. So, I mean, it's not a very, and I read anyway when I was trying to find just the second one, that the 4th one was a piece of crap. Sorry, but it was. And so I already kind of had a heads up, but why was it a piece of crap? Why was it rated 2.5 stars? And of course you have to make your own judgment. So this is what Marco says. And I may have to stop and take a drink because my throat's really dry. Marco says, this movie is a snooze fest. It has a straight-to-video look to it, like Jason Goes to Hell. The plot barely has anything to do with prom, which is what I just said. Might as well have been a completely different movie, which is, I thought that exactly too. Not even related to the prom night series. This movie was so low budget, they couldn't even afford to do an actual prom. They just showed people outside the school going in for one, and that's true. They didn't show any gym decorated, lights going, music playing. Nope, didn't do it. The story about the bad guy, I don't know if you're talking about all the priests, is unintelligible and bizarre, it is true. It's like, where does this all come from? It's like the plot of a lame Tale from the Crypt knockoff episode. I have no idea why religion was brought into the prom night series. Because the girls went to Catholic school. In fact, they all might have gone to a Catholic school. But I don't know, maybe one of them didn't, and that was the prom that they were all supposed to go to. Unless it's a reference to Carrie. The quote, "It's not who you go to prom with, it's who you go home with," has been said so many times, I'm sick of hearing it. This movie harkens back to the first one by being boring as hell. There's a random scene where the final girl's best friend tries to lesbian up with her. Felt like a lazy trick to make certain people in the audience forgive how bad and boring this movie is. Well, what she says is her name is Laura, and she's blonde. And the other girl's Megan. And Laura says, well, I read in this magazine that you should do something like this to see if your friend's gay, like a hidden gay or not. And oh, God. It's queer. But I thought, my God, what is happening here? But it was just BS. Sorry, I'm about to swear. The main villain is laughably bad. He's too goofy to be scary and too boring to be interesting. He's like a boring and lame version of Angela from Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3. And how many kills tools does he have? Less than a handful? There's a very bizarre jump scare where you think the friend has been hurt, and then it turns out she's just having sex with her boyfriend. Very weird. Never seen that in a horror movie before. Very bizarre subplot about one of the guy's little brothers stalking him to peep on his brother, and that brother, I think, is, I don't know, is it Jeff? I don't know. I don't know which boy it is. And his friends, and also takes pics of them to sell. Very, very weird. Actually, I thought he was doing a sex movie of, it was Jeff and Laura having sex. I thought that's what he was doing. But I'm like, how did he get there? There's no vehicle there. So how did he get there? They don't live down the street. They live miles and miles away. They showed them driving. They're in a chauffeur-driven car, and they go to the school, and the one boy moons all the classmates waiting to go inside to the prom, and then he puts his pants up, and then they continue on to this hideaway house.
That moment was how I felt like watching the movie.
Yeah. So anyway, I didn't even think about that at the time, but as I'm thinking about it right now, just remembering the scene, I'm like, and I don't even know if this kid could even drive. So how to get there? But anyway, that's all just minor BS. Okay. And then, this is what happens. I'll just read what Marco says, and I'll make a comment again. Somehow the main villain teleported to inside of the mansion so he could do a scare. He was outside, and he hitched a ride with the guy who was driving a truck, and then he killed him, and the truck was nearby this house, mansion, whatever. So that's how he got there. But how he got to the outside in the first place to hitch a ride with this guy, how did that happen? They don't show that. Okay, the main villain dressing up as the blonde girl is hilarious. Is he supposed to be scary? Because what happens, Laura goes missing. Jeff was locked out of the room, and he went in there, and she was gone. So all three people were looking for her. So this was actually the attic, and when he opened the door, it's almost like Psycho. There's a rocking chair, and it looks like his girlfriend sitting in the chair because the blonde hair is on the girl. And he says, "What are you doing, Laura? I've been looking all over for you." Megan and whatever his name is, they've been looking for you too. And so he turns her around, and it's the priest, and of course the priest stabs him, and he's dead. So anyway, it was like, is that supposed to be like a reference to Psycho and the mother, or the guy dressing up as his mother in the rocking chair? And remember that scene in that movie where the sister opens the door and goes in there, and it turns out to be the skeleton of that old lady. And anyway, this is one of the sleepiest horror sequels we've seen, along with Ghoulies 4 and Children of the Corn 7. Sorry. Continuing, there's a part where the final girl trips over the dead brother, and you can see his eyes move. It was like a 5-second shot, so it's pretty embarrassing. He couldn't hold still for that long. I didn't notice that, but it kind of doesn't surprise me. The final girls, and yes, I'll have to tell you, the only reason why I thought, now there's only 2 girls, so that's pretty bad, because like usually there's a group, like boys and girls, and so then you pick this final girl because there's something about her, and you say, oh, that's her, and then she ends up being the final girl. There's only 2, so it's like you can hazard a guess 50-50. Well, she was wearing a cross around her neck, And that's why I thought she'd be the final girl. I don't know how Marco decided that, but I mean, it was a 50-50 guess. Okay? So, continuing, the final girl's boyfriend shot at the roof without seeing where the bad guy was. He then got stabbed in the foot and dropped his gun instead of shooting right beneath him. And here the guy was. That's what I didn't get either. And that was a thing too. This villain demon priest, he was using it was like an extra large cross. It wasn't something that was something you hold in your hand. It was bigger, like a sword. And one of the ends, the long end of the cross was like shaped like a knife. And he was using it to stab people. And he stabbed the boyfriend with it. Final girls are always boring and or a virgin. Okay, that's what Marco says. That's how he guessed that Laura, the blonde, who was clearly very, she liked to have sex with whatever, everybody or anybody or just the one guy, I don't know. And it was established in the beginning. She was caught in the back seat of her boyfriend's car by the nun at the Catholic school in the parking lot. So, yeah, you're right. Anyway, all right. So that was a weird thing. I mean, the boyfriend's on the roof. The bad guy's in the attic, right underneath him. He has a gun with bullets in it. And he could have, like, the bad guy revealed himself. And he stuck the cross up, because I told you it had a pointy end, up through the roof so he could see where he was. And why didn't he shoot there? And he's like he didn't know what to do. And then he ended up falling off the roof. And, of course, he dropped the gun. And then he fell to the ground. Of course, he was dying of falling and probably breaking every bone in his body. But then the priest threw down his cross and speared him in the chest. So finalizing his life. Strange scene where the girls have to figure out how to cook dinner with little ingredients. Yeah, there was some kind of off scenes. I was thinking like, oh, now we're going to do a cooking show. Because what had happened, I'll just explain that. That was Marco's little comment that he wrote out on a piece of paper. They could smell some real bad smell, and they opened up the basement or whatever room that was, and all of the refrigerated food was thrown on the floor, and had been like they picked whoever it was, like it wasn't the psychotic priest, it was like bad people, robbers, and they had gotten all of this food and they'd thrown it out of the refrigerator, so it was rotting, because who knows how long it'd been there. And then they'd stolen like the TV and all these other electronics. So they found a few little items in the cupboard and made themselves a dinner, and all I could see there was rice, but somehow it looked like they made an average dinner for everybody. So that's what he's talking about. So back to the roof, and anyway, this is Marco's final comments. He says they need to make a Prom Night 5, where Mary Lou, that's the original bad girl, takes revenge against the filmmakers who made Prom Night 4. The final fight is very similar to Halloween Resurrection, but somehow more hilarious. There's an explosion, a weird firefight with a shovel. The only credit I can give this movie is the last 5 minutes is really fun and entertaining in a good/bad way. So many weird creative choices. And what happens is the girl, there's just a couple things. I'll finish up and then I'll say a few things about, okay. This is some great, now remember when we do reviews of movies and like TV seasons, not individual episodes, but seasons, we grade them with food. Like some kind of food that we ate, whether it was good or bad. Something we tried, could be a cookie, candy, pizza, anything. So this is what Marco says. He gave it a mystery flavored dum-dum that he ate earlier. He could not tell what flavors were in it, but it was boring. It tasted like lemon, bubble gum, and maybe birthday cake, but it was not a good flavor combo. I would not eat that sucker again. I do not think Prom Night 4 is the worst movie in the world, but it has very few redeemable qualities. It would take a pink moon instead of a blue moon to watch this movie again. And then he has a couple of other comments, and then I might say a couple things. Not that I don't know if what I say is worth anything, because he pretty much covered it. I just added a few things already. The final twist at the end is another FU. That was a thing I didn't get. Not every horror movie needs a twist. That's true. Not everything in life. Not every story. Remember, I have repeatedly said I read tons of books. I just finished one. I'm starting a new one. I've already started it. And not every one of those mystery books, no matter who wrote them, because I've read several series, has twist. So that's just, you either do it or you don't, or you might have more than one, but you don't need it in a movie or a book every single time. The final twist at the end is another FU, like what I said, not like what Marco said. I'm reading his comments. Not every horror movie needs a twist, and when it's this lazy, you don't appreciate it. Sorry. The only other positive I can think of is the blonde woman. She was the witch Sarabeth in the Goosebumps Monster Blood episode. It was fun to see her again. Okay, now, let's see. Number one, my comments are just, I have a few little things and questions. I don't know whose house this was. It seemed to be a relative of Jeff's. I don't know if it's like an uncle or what, because they had to know where to go, and he was the one. When he went looking for the gun in a hurry, he knew where to find it, so he knew where stuff was. So that would mean that whoever owns the house, he's familiar with them. So, and they may have said it, but I couldn't hear it. Sometimes they mumbled, and I couldn't hear it. And so, at the beginning of the movie, they show this devil priest, and then you have this other young priest. He's getting ready to go to Africa, and his name is Connor, and he meets Megan. That's when they introduce Megan, and they're best friends, and Connor says, I'm leaving soon. But then you see him, he goes into this meeting with this priest, and they say, well, you're not going. You have been assigned to watch this evil priest. And he was put in this cell, so he's like a prison cell, and he's flat on his back, and they said he was catatonic, but they keep him, in case he wakes up, they keep him sedated with some kind of drug, and he's supposed to go into a cell and give him an injection every day, and of course you know what's going to happen. This is a young priest, and he thinks he's going to do something magical, and change everything, and he doesn't give him his injection, and that's how this demon priest got out. He killed Connor, and that's how he was even out to begin with. So, and before Connor got killed, he was strangled with some kind of cord. He called this cardinal, who they told this priest, he died, and that's why Connor had taken over. He told him if anything happened, he was supposed to call his cardinal. So then you see, after all this bad stuff with Connor happens, the cardinal comes, and that's when they lock the priest up. And then, of course, like I said, Connor didn't give him his shot. He was not really asleep and got out, and that's how that all starts. But anyway, let's see. And it started off, too, this had happened with that priest going crazy at the beginning, and that's why they locked him up in 1957. And it was called this St. Basil Seminary, if anybody cares. And then we end up in the year 1991 as St. George Church, and that's where the priest had been kept, and then Connor screwed up and he got out, etc. And let's see, I don't know. Just want to make sure that I have everything. Marco were pretty much, they had a Pepsi product placement, which they don't do all the time, but I thought that was interesting. It was like the boring Pepsi can of all boring Pepsi cans. And then, like the blonde girl said, but see, now here's what the blonde girl says. When they're together at this, I don't know if they're there at the house before they leave to go out, or they're there at the house with the boys and they're in the room and they're looking at their very attractive underwear, I guess, they wore this lacy stuff. And the one blonde girl, Laura, she says, quote, "There's nothing worse than two virgins trying to F, you know what." So, like, what does that mean? So is she saying so that's what I'm saying. That's why I didn't know who the final girl, it could have been a toss-up, but you picked Megan like I did, because I thought because she had that cross, and somehow that was going to save her, like from Dracula, So, anyway, I don't think there's anything else that I need to say, except that it just seems like the prom night people wanted to make a prom night movie, and the guy who made the movie wanted to make a movie about a killer priest who was possessed by the devil. And so I guess because the prom night people wanted to get something out, they let him do this story, which had nothing to do with prom, and that's how it came up. And I gave it a, kind of similar to Marco, I got this, I like to do it every so often. I'm not really a Mountain Dew fan, but I like to, it has caffeine in it, and sometimes I get tired in the afternoon, like around 3:30, and so the caffeine picks me up. So yeah, I got a mystery flavor Mountain Dew. It's called Voodoo, and it tasted like just sweet bunch of nothings. Like, I thought it might be birthday cake, and I had Marco taste it too, and it had like a very light hint of a fruit, but it was like they put a drop in it, like they put it maybe a half a teaspoon, a quarter teaspoon for the whole. I mean, how many gallons does it take for them of the Mountain Dew, and how many bottles do they bottle with whatever Mountain Dew they have, like, is it 10 gallons for 5 cases, or, I have no idea how they do that. It's probably all automated, and they just press buttons and make sure all the machinery's working when they fill up the bottles. But it tastes like there's like a drop of some kind of fruit flavor, but it's not good. So don't even bother. It's called Voodoo, and it's kind of like, it's voodoo, like, is it VEUDEW? Because, Dew, Mountain Dew. And that's what I gave it. Marco's telling me something else. Play, I don't know, something better than that. I don't know what he's talking about. So anyway, I don't know what he means by that. I've had better Mountain Dews. I think every year about this time they have a mystery flavor. And I think it's for Halloween. So that might, because it had a scary face on it, like a voodoo face. Sorry, like a mask or something. So anyway, that's it. So Marco's trying to give me sign language. I don't know what the HE, what he's talking about, but I'm going to end this review. And I'm sorry that I'm like talking fast, but the movie is not really worth your time really. And I wouldn't bother with it. You know, if you're like, you know, sometimes if you want to be like a person who, you know, these book series I read, sometimes all the books in the series, all of them are not all good. There's only a few series I've read where some of the books, there's some books in it that are, I mean, some series where they're all pretty good, but mainly there's always a couple of stinkers. And especially with these horror movies, you know, you're just not gonna, it seems like they started off, you know, average, they went up, and then they just started descending down to the low life and to the what would you call it, the dungeons of hell or something. And this movie was kind of like that, you know, it went whoop whoop. Sorry, it just, that's what it was like. It was like a slide going down and like falling off the slide and hitting the ground real hard on your rear end. So anyway, that's it. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and become one of our subscribers. We welcome all new subscribers. We have 600 and what do we have, Marco? Can you tell me? 624 maybe? Yeah. So that's really nice, and we appreciate every one of you. And we're trying our best. Let's see, tomorrow is Wednesday. Gee, I don't know if that, Thursday night will be, don't do that. Thursday night will be Hell's Kitchen and The Old Man. And anyway, we have more planned, and wish Marco good luck and tell him that you hope he feels better so he can get better. And because he's a lot better than in reviews than I am. I do watch some of these things and I try my best, but you know, I do the selling of thrifted goods, so that's my main activity, and I just do this too, but more of a part-time to the other. This is mainly Marco's baby. So anyway, goodbye everybody.